Matt is here from Mitsubishi to give us a update on some new products and new forms of products. So, Matt, can you control the slides?
I think so. Is this working correctly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so real quick, I'll be brief because quite a bit of content to cover, be mindful of time. My name is Matt Rash. I'm one of the product managers for Mitsubishi Electric Train. I currently cover the three-phase air-to-water product, which is more of an emerging technology for us and that we're expanding here. We have been expanding over the last couple years and will continue to do so going forward. So I wanted to touch on some of the three main products that we have launched, will launch in the near future and within the year today. So this really covers what we call the Heat 2O, which I think a lot of folks are familiar with, our CO2 heat pump based hot water heater for domestic, and then a couple new products that fall under what's called our EcoDan Pro umbrella, which includes a CHV air to water heat pump for low delta T, and then a future e-chiller product, modular heat pump chiller product. So we'll go through each of these in a little bit of detail. So the Heat 2O, the model nomenclature is QHV. We just expanded this launch nationwide. For about probably the past 3 years, we've been in a limited test market launch in pockets of the East Coast and West Coast. So it's been out there, it's been vetted, and this certainly is a new product. This existed overseas for quite some time, but we've just expanded this across the U.S. and expanded the offering to provide more flexibility to handle different climates and installer capability, trading off upfront costs for simplification and enhanced features. So I'll go through a little bit of that in some detail. Again, just to recap, the QHV product, this is a CO2-based heat pump hot water heater, strictly for domestic hot water. It's geared for extremely high delta T type applications like domestic water, not for low delta T heating hot water, building HVAC type applications. That's where the CHV product is going to fall under, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. So again, it's CO2 based, fairly high COP, depending on conditions, obviously removing ozone depletion potential, very low GWP, and hot water temperatures on this at the highest level that we offer across any of our lineup, up to 176 degrees. That being said, this is the hot water outlet on the unit itself, and it always has to be applied with a separation heat exchanger. So this unit isn't necessarily potable rated. It is an NSF. So we always apply this with the separation heat exchanger. And then typically the piping between the QHV and the separation heat exchanger indoors is going to be filled with glycol, up to 30% polypropylene. Max in most climates is what we allow. So this is not a return to primary. I know that question came up. Again, this is high delta T. It's single pass application. We want to see this applied with series type storage tank arrangements, as you see here in this basic diagram. So those always have to be a swing tank separately to handle those idle loads, those low delta T loads. And again, the series tank configuration maintains the stratification, and maintains our water temp, why it charges and why it discharges. So again, it's geared for the high delta T operation. And then depending on the application, we have different options for how that pump heat exchanger boundary is controlled with regard to flow turn down on the potable side, to what degree of flow turn down we can get to, as well as other enhanced capabilities for COP monitoring. So right here in this diagram, this what we call the primary side, the secondary side with storage. Those are components that we control as with this solution, meaning we want you to purchase and procure those from us because they're critical to how the product is applied. The swing tank is going to be procured locally or by others, by the installing contractor. There is some flexibility on the storage tanks. For storage tanks that are farther upstream, I'm referring to the hot tanks, but the cold tanks, the temperature control tanks, we always want those procured from us. They're specially designed with sparge fittings and strategic thermistor well locations. So again, with this three-tier offering that we've expanded, you've got basically these major categories that you're selecting. The QHV units, the number are going to vary by project. The quantity of tanks are going to vary. The swing tank size will vary. Again, that's procured by others. The major difference comes in this pump heat exchanger boundary, the capabilities and the controls in that, and how that's offered. So going forward, this is what we've launched this year. I think that back in October timeframe of 2025, we have three different options. So we have what's called our core solution, which is very similar to the initial, what we called version 1 that was launched in limited test markets. It's fairly basic controls, a little DC commutated pump has its own built-in temperature controller with a temperature sensor that's wired in the field. It's all shipped loose and installed by the local contractor, but we've expanded the controls capability to allow for staging and auto rotation lead leg control. That was something that was lacking from the basic factory controls. So we've taken over that function and expanded it with a new, what we call QHV heat tool control panel that manages all of that. The other two options are really identical in terms of control capability. This is what gives you higher degree of flow turn down, important for colder climates. It also incorporates more advanced controls for flow tracking between the primary and secondary. And that also brings in the ability integrated COP monitoring capabilities that's part of that solution without having to go to additional custom controls. And that's offered in two versions, which the premier version being what we call the Connect, which is basically a skid platform where all those components are pre-assembled. That also gives you the added benefit of an included 10-gallon buffer tank and expansion tank for that primary glycol side. So that's all pre-packaged, pre-piped, takes all of that out of the hands of the contractor. And then again, based on cost or needs or logistics, if they want to go to a piecemeal version, we have that as well. And that's going to be the kit. So again, the Connect and the kit are identical in capability, functionality. It's just based on upfront cost and preference for what's needed for the project. Each of these also require a tank temperature control panel. That's what's going to monitor temperature in those tanks and then make the decisions with regard to staging lead leg operation of the individual skids or the kits. And then there's also an option that you can harness the information and from the skids or from the kits with regard to the flow meters and the temperature sensors to do all that COP monitoring and demand response functions that are built into that. And I'll show some of that in a minute. So again, this Connect option, pre-packaged, pre-piped, taking all of that out of the hands of the contractor, minimizing problems in the field. Again, it's going to include that 10-gallon buffer tank and expansion tank. This is the only option that has those included, pre-piped. All the other options, the expansion tank and buffer tank, are field provided. So scalability of this system is pretty basic. Every time you have a new QHV or add a QHV to the system, you're going to have to repeat that pump heat exchanger boundary with the controls. And again, that's really where the skid starts to differentiate itself. When you get into larger projects, we have multiples of these. The skid's also stackable, so you can stack these up to 3 skids high for additional space savings. But regardless of the solution, this all looks similar across the board schematically in terms of how these scale, being connected in reverse return on the potable side, with your storage tank farm. This slide just kind of summarizes some of the major trade-offs and differentiators between the solutions. Again, the core is kind of our legacy solution. It's been updated with more advanced controls for staging lead leg operation. It's going to be the lowest cost by far. That's probably the lead-in solution in most locations. Again, with the kit and the Connect, that brings in additional capability, higher degree of flow turn down, more precise flow modulation with flow tracking. So there's flow meters on the primary and secondary side. They also incorporate a 2-position valve on the potable side that allows that to get down to ultra low flow, and that's where we can maintain up to 160 degree discharge water temperature down to that -13 degree level. That's more difficult with the core. We're doing more testing in colder climates to see if we can extend that, but just in basic terms today, we're limiting that roughly to around 0 degree F. But this does depend on several conditions: city water temperature, what your actual set temperature is for your discharge water. So there's ways to expand that with the core. But in general, if you want up to 160 degrees on the potable side, down to minus 13 degrees, which is the minimum rating condition we have, you really have to go to the kit and the connect. Again, that includes the meters, so you get that COP functionality built in if you include the supervisory panel with the solution. That would have to be a custom quote solution or custom field provided with the core. So those are the main differentiators. And then obviously with the skid, you've got everything pre-piped, and that's really the lowest complexity in terms of install with the skid solution, but also the highest cost. So again, there's a supervisory panel option in addition to that tank temperature control panel on the kit and the connect. That's what brings in this capability for demand response, COP monitoring. That's where you'll get your CTA 2045, a much more expansive BACnet IP points list. And by the way, all this literature is published today on our Mitsubishi Pro website. You can go there and look at these submittals. If you just type in QHV Connect or QHV Kit into Mitsubishi Pro, you'll get detailed submittals. It'll give you that full expansive point list for each of these options, but pretty extensive across the board in terms of what's in that BACnet integration with this solution. You also have over-the-air update options with that as well. So again, that's an added option, but that's really what unlocks the full capabilities of those two solutions. With the core, again, you have to have that basically the QHV control panel. That's what manages the lead, leg, and staging of the components. So that's a little bit different from the version 1 that some folks may have been familiar with in the limited test markets. We've expanded that for the lead, leg control and staging, but that also has options for demand response with an additional device from SkyCentrics. And Tristan is available on this call. He provided some slides. They've been involved. The SkyCentrics folks have been involved with some of these pilot projects, early projects that I mentioned in limited test markets. So I threw in a couple slides here to summarize where they've utilized this product along with the SkyCentrics for demand limiting, load shifting, I should say. So he's on the chat. If you have questions for him, please reach out to him on the chat as well. I forgot to mention, but I have Evan Eves from our controls BMS side of the business within Metis. He's been integral into the development of this product, and he can answer any more specific questions about the controls and capabilities. So reach out to Evan Eves in the chat if you've got questions on controls that I didn't have time to cover here. So again, this has been installed in several test markets, and you can see some examples of load shifting that was implemented for a multifamily project here. They pointed out here that for a multifamily application, the QHV power draw was a significant portion of the total building demand, approximately 1/2. That's pretty significant. So obviously it's important to consider those options for demand load shifting, and you have that capability with this. And he provided some great examples of some projects out there installed with the QHV already in some of these test markets where that load shift functionality is being implemented. So that was a real quick overview. We we actually have a webinar that covers that product almost over the course of 7 hours that we gave for our internal staff when we launched this. It's probably one of the most complex products that we've offered yet in the history of Metis. So if anybody's interested in learning more about it, please get with us. It really doesn't do it justice to cover it in a brief session like this, but that's a quick nibble, if you will, at that capability of the product and how it's applied. Again, the other product that we're launching soon that I mentioned, CHV, that'll be at the AHR show as well as the QHV product. This is built for low delta T, much more simple in terms of application, again, geared for typical closed loop heating hot water applications. It's not potable rated either. but it could be used for domestic hot water. I'll try to show an example of that if we have time. But it has to be applied differently. It would typically be applied in a multi-pass arrangement, again, because it's low delta T, and you would have options to do return to primary with this, with your storage, and eliminate the swing tank. This has similar nominal heat output, 40 kW, so nominally it's similar to the QHV product. It doesn't get up to as high a water temperature, up to 165 down to 14 degrees, and then 149 at minus 13. So this is something to watch out for with domestic and colder climates. Certainly if you want to have storage water temps closer to 150 or above, that can be problematic. It is A2L, obviously 454C, so low GWP, compliant with transition rules. So again, this is a single capacity lineup. It'll be available in 460 initially, and then shortly after, probably in April, March timeframe, there'll be a 2.8 version available. This system can be combined up to 16 modules, so nominal capacity up to over 2,000 MBH. It's reverse cycle hot gas defrost. The pressure rating for this is much higher than what you have on the QHV unit, so up to 145 PSI. The QHV unit does not have that. So this is an integral refrigerant to water brazed plate heat exchanger, so much more suitable for higher pressure applications on heating hot water systems in the commercial realm. So again, to compare and contrast with the QHV product, again, QHV on the left, it's really geared towards that single pass domestic hot water application, high delta T with an ultra low flow turn down. So again, even though these two products have similar nominal capacity, you're dealing with roughly 8 GPM or less on the QHV product and around 30 GPM, not much lower below that on the CHV product. So the CHV is low delta T. You're going to see delta T's at 10 degrees or less, especially when it becomes derated in the winter conditions, whereas the QHV's geared towards maintaining that high delta T, maintaining discharge water temp, and it does that with ultra low flow turn down. So you could see upwards of 8 GPM down to 0.8 GPM on the primary side of that QHV unit with its integral pump. So two uniquely different products, different in terms of how they're applied. Basic components of the CHV, again, it looks very similar to some of the City Multi VRF product you may have been familiar with in the past. It almost is identical to our older K-Gen City Multi chassis. So you've got two DC commutated condenser fans, DC compressor, commutated compressor, again, refrigerant to water heat exchanger. This is with groove connections, 1.5 inch. Again, temperature capability, as I mentioned, 165 degrees down to 14, and then it tapers off here at around 149 at minus 13, and then a thermal lockout on this at around minus 18, and then it'll restart at minus 13. In terms of, again, scalability, what's unique with this product is without any additional controls, the standard factory controls allow for staging, auto rotation, lead lag. That's different from the QHV product. That's one of the reasons why we had to go to additional controls that we develop here stateside within Metis. The CHV doesn't have that limitation. With basic city multi controls with a remote controller, we can set up a group leader, and basically it can handle staging and lead lag of up to 16 modules to meet a combined blended water temperature set point target. We provide the water temperature sensors, and the system manages that automatically without any additional DDC controls. If you want a variable pumping on the primary side, you could do that in a couple different ways. You could have dedicated pumps through each module, or you could have a central station primary pump that would require a VFD with some additional DDC controls to manage that. And you can put two position valves here at each of the CHV units. So there's different ways to skin that. It's not eliminating DDC scope from the project, but in terms of plant staging capability and control of the modules and integrating that, that's all included with the standard control offering. And I wasn't able to get the slide that I wanted to show in here, but as I mentioned, if you wanted to apply this product for domestic hot water, It would be well suited to multi-pass, return to primary. So you would look to do that with hot water type generators. We're looking at hot water generators with U2 bundles potentially that people could procure. Not necessarily something that we're going to offer, but for cost considerations and variation in application, those are easily procured. Niles is who we've worked with in the past for tanks, and they offer hot water generators with U2 bundles, and that could easily be applied in a similar fashion with up to 16 modules serving multiple hot water generators with that recirc load brought back to the hot water generator tanks. So if you're interested in seeing some sample diagrams for that, we can make that available. I apologize I wasn't able to get that in there last minute. And then quickly, I know I'm going through this fast, trying to be mindful of time. Yep.
Matt, we have just 2 minutes left.
Yep. Okay. Is that just for me or for my
For you.
section? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm almost done. I'm going through
Keep
this very
going.
fast. So the e-chiller, I'll just give you a little bit of a nibble on a product that's coming up here within the year. This is a heat pump chiller. It's already been launched for our Latin market. So again, if you go to our website, mitsubishipro.com, you can find this product. It's the non-UL product, but the capabilities and functionality of it will be almost identical. So it's a modular heat pump chiller. It's offered in two different sizes, 40 and 50 ton. It doesn't have quite as high capabilities on the heating side, down to -4, with leaving water temps that are a little bit lower. So it's up to a max of 131. But there are some trade-offs there with hot water temps versus efficiency on the cooling side and high IPLVs, which we're able to achieve with this. So you'll see IPLVs well above 21 for the 40 and 50 ton unit. And again, you've got that hot water heat pump capability. It's not simultaneous, so it's changeover. But for things like domestic hot water preheat or summer VAV reheat, if you're tying this into a 4-pipe network, it's perfectly suitable for some of those applications. So again, it's a modularized concept, all inverter driven scroll compressors. It actually has 4 circuits in it, and the unit can continue to run if one of those circuits go down, so minimal impact. It also has built-in lead lag functionality like the CHV system, and you can actually scale this up with basic city multi-controls to control to blended combined leaving water temperature with up to 24 modules. And again, the system will manage that automatically without additional DDC controls. Pumping controls with variable pumping controls would be obviously separate and in addition to this, but plant staging, control for blended water temperature can all be managed with the basic controls, again, up to 1,200 tons with that product. So look for that within the next year. We're hoping by October timeframe of 2026 that will be available. So
Thank you, Matt.
yep,
Thank you
thank you.
very much.